It's time to hit up some props right here on the Early Edge with Larry, Danny, and Mike. And as we always do, we start with passing props. Larry, I'm going to start with you on CJ Stroud.
Yeah, going under 21 and a half completions. If you just look at his career outdoors, he's under 60% in terms of completion percentage. Indoors, that spikes all the way up to 66%. A lot of his other metrics go down when you're outdoors. And I just think they are going to play it conservative. They know they have an elite defense. They're going to run the ball a ton. So getting to 22 completion seems like a big ask. I think the main thing is they don't want to let TJ Watt or Highsmith or Herbig make a big play to spark the Steelers. And if they do that, they probably feel they're going to win.
Mike, I know you agree with this play, and I know we have some rushing props that kind of correlate with an under completions prop.
Yeah, it's just a big number, in my opinion, for a game that I think is maybe a little bit more of a slow mover. You know, in the previous segment, mentioned what Aaron Rodgers is so good at, working a game clock and managing it, giving his team a chance to win late. I think that means limited possessions. And I think if you're Houston, you certainly want to lean on that running game as much as you possibly can. I keep going back to the fact that I don't think CJ Stroud is great outdoors. And it's also a product of that offense and that system. A lot of when they've had a lot of success offensively has been when they've been able to kind of push the ball down the field. That's difficult to do in these conditions. So I think that you want to play completions, not attempts here, because I think there's a scenario late where they are having to throw a ton. I'm going to go under on the completions with Larry.
I agree, Mike, about the rough conditions and about the scenario that I think is more likely than not that CJ Stroud and company are going to have to throw late. And that's why this is the first time all year I've brought this prop, because I don't usually play INT props. I'm going to take CJ Stroud over a half an interception on the road against a pretty healthy Steelers defense. This one's minus 110. I think there's actually some good value here, in spite of the fact that we don't think there's going to be a ton of volume from CJ Stroud. Speaking of volume, though, we got to get to Aaron Rodgers. Danny Brasco, you like some volume from Aaron?
I mean, Mike McClure talked about it earlier, man. This is maybe the last hurrah for A-Rod, and the game and the offense is on him. He's way over his pass attempts number in the last 3 games, all of which have been must-win down the stretch against strong defenses, too. He had 41, 39, and 47 attempts. He's well over this 32.5 mark in 4 of his last 5 games, and he's got to make it happen. I think we're going to see a lot of short area, quick dink and dunk targets, and the Steelers could be playing in, like Mike said, a really long kind of sustained drives in which they're managing the clock, or the Texans defense gets on them quick. They're playing from behind, and Rodgers is forced to, throw the ball in a negative game script. Either way, I think he's going to put the onus on himself and go over this pass attempts total.
All right, we go from volume at the quarterback to volume at the running back position. Larry, you and Mike are in agreement here on Woody Marks, but I'm going to let you give the take on over 15 and a half rush attempts.
Yeah, you look at him down the stretch. He's cleared this in the last 6 games where he has finished the game, aside from the game that he had to leave due to the ankle injury. This is what they want to do. Our colleague prop bet guy over at SportsLine noted Houston has the 6th highest run game rate in neutral situations, and I think we're expecting a pretty tight game here of any team since week 12. This is what they want to do. They want to rely on their defense. They love Woody Marks. They keep feeding it to him, even though maybe the efficiency hasn't been there. So I love him to get at least 16 carries.
So I'm a little bit on the other side of the Woody Marks argument. It's part of the reason that I like Jaylen Warren at plus 120 to have the most rushing yards in the game. Of course, that includes both sides here. I just don't think Woody Marks, he might get the volume. I don't think he's going to be particularly effective. And I'm not so sure that the Texans are absolutely in love with the manner in which Woody Marks runs. And I think that's why you see a lot of Jawar Jordan when he's healthy. Saw some British Brooks last week. And of course, Nick Chubb may get in the mix. Now, as far as Jaylen Warren is concerned, obviously Kenneth Gainwell will get some carries. But when you look at the rushing yards props for Jaylen Warren versus Woody Marks, they're only 4 or 5 yards apart. And I just love the fact that Jaylen Warren is at home and that he's really running extremely hard. And I think we're looking at a neutral or positive game script from the Steelers. So I'm willing to take the plus money here, plus 120 on Jaylen Warren to lead all running backs in rushing yards. Let's stick with rushing, Danny Brasco, but we're going to stick with rushing at the quarterback position.
This is probably my favorite prop of the night here. And we saw quarterbacks take off yesterday. Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen went over his rush attempts. Justin Herbert went way over his rush yards. I'm taking CJ Stroud to go over his rushing yards. I think he'll be on the run out of necessity against TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and the Steelers defensive line, who's going to get after him, blitz the quarterback. Stroud has struggled against the blitz. And in the playoffs last season, against both the Chargers and the Chiefs, he had 6 attempts for 42 rushing yards. So he's taken off in the playoffs. He was a runner earlier in the season. 7 of the first 8 games to start the year, he went well over this number. And he's had 10 plus rush yards in 9 games this season. So really just need him to feel the pressure, be under duress a little bit. The Texans O-line has certainly improved from the terrible showing they had last season. But Ariante Ursary, he's in, but he's been banged up. If he gets hurt, or if he's, if a backup has to come in for him at left tackle, I think the Texans O-line could show their problems, and Stroud's going to have to take off. So I'm betting on him to go over 11.5 rush yards tonight, Sia.
Let's talk receiving yards, because Mike, if CJ Stroud drops back to pass, his first read most likely on most plays will be Nico Collins. You can find this line anywhere between 68.5, 71.5. You like a Nico Collins over, right, Mike?
I like it under. I'm going under on Nico Collins at 71.5. Look, Nico is an interesting case because he has the upside to essentially hit this on 2 receptions in a lot of games. I just think that this isn't the time for it. I think so much of him having the success with CJ Stroud depends on timing, not only time to throw, but just the individual timing together. Being outdoors in the elements against this Steelers team, while they haven't been great all season, I think they're great tonight defensively. I think this is a good matchup for Pittsburgh. When I look at Nico, though, what I'm concerned with is 6 games in a row, he's had 5 or fewer receptions. And in 3 of those games, he's catching almost less than 50% of his passes, which tells me the timing's off already to begin with. And a lot of those games, almost all of them came indoors. So for me, I think that this is a spot to fade Nico. I think that they'll take him out of the game the best they can. And he's going to have some success throwing to guys like Dalton Schultz personally. So I went under the 71.5 on Nico.
So this is interesting, Danny, because Mike found the 71.5 and he took the under. You found a 68.5 and you're taking the over. So give us the other side of the argument.
Yeah, I have to disagree a little bit. First of all, the outdoor conditions could certainly impact this. If we see Stroud struggle in the cold, then that'll be that. But it's the coverages that the Steelers run that favor Nico Collins in the matchup. They run top 5 rate of man and single high safety. Nico Collins destroys those in terms of yards per route run, yards per target. He leads the Texans, and he's done extremely well against those looks. And in terms of zone looks, the Steelers run a lot of cover 3. That's CJ Stroud's best look as well. So I actually do think he'll be able to succeed against a Steelers secondary that's been very liable to give up explosive plays. We saw last week against Zay Flowers, back-to-back 50-plus yard touchdowns, the same exact play. They also gave up a big one to Devontae Walker. So they're, liable to give up explosives, and I can see Nico Collins hitting a couple of those.
All right, I'm going to go with Pat Freiermuth over 31.5 receiving yards. I just like how he stepped it up, and I know Aaron Rodgers is going to have to get rid of the ball quick. No Darnell Washington. Freiermuth has really been a trusted target and a little bit down the field as well. I'll take him over 31.5 receiving yards. Larry, you're taking Jaylen Warren receiving yards.
Yeah, 5 catches on 5 targets for 33 yards last week, playing great football, running very efficiently. I think he's going to be on the field a ton. In addition to Kenneth Gainwell catching his usual 5 to 6 passes, he's going to dump it off to Jaylen Warren. So 10.5 receiving yards seems very low, specifically in this matchup. If you look at the Texans, the last 4 games, they have given up 20 catches to opposing running backs, and that's how you have to attack them. You have to get rid of it quick.
All right, that's Jaylen Warren over 10.5 receiving yards. We only have time to get to a couple of the game props. Larry, yours is so interesting because I don't think you've ever come to the show with a bet like this. Talk to me about the Texans' first play of the game bet.
Both teams, whatever first play of the game, it goes under 4.5 yards. That's coming back at -140 on BetMGM. You just have 2 defensive conservative coaches who are going to hand the ball off on first down, and the defense knows that they're going to hand the ball off on first down just to get into the game, just to get their feet wet, and I think we get a run for 4 or less yards.
All right, so that's either team, just the first play.
Either team.
Yeah. Mike, I got to get to yours because you've brought this to the Early Edge Morning Show a few times. You brought it to this show a couple of times. Texans' first drive punt is -110.
Yeah, I like it here. Look, it's a difficult environment to play in. Number one, when the crowd is going to be most into the game is that opening drive. And then as the game is competitive later throughout, I think it's a conservative start, whether it's handing the ball off to Woody Marks or just a missed throw deeper for CJ Stroud. And one thing we know that the Texans will do, Sia, is they will absolutely, particularly early in a game, punt the football and rely on that defense. Any opportunity they can to back Aaron Rodgers up inside his own 20, that is certainly going to be what they care about most here, more so than trying to convert a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 on that opening drive. Give me a first drive punt here for the Houston Texans.
Gosh, that feels like a good number. I feel like that should be like minus 135, minus 140 at least, but here we are. All right, first touchdown scores. Let's go through these really quick, maybe 5 seconds. We don't need to spend a lot of analysis on a fun, admittedly gimmicky bet here. I like Pat Freiermuth 17-1 as your first touchdown score. Danny Brasco, what do you like?
I'm normally going for long shots, but give me Nico Collins. I talked about the coverage matchup. I think he can hit long bomb for a touchdown, plus 650.
Mike, you're going for a long shot.
Yeah, it feels, hey, look, golf is back. See ya. It feels like we're just grabbing a golf long shot here. How about Connor Hayward, plus 3,500, 35-1. We've seen him do it lately. They run this little version of the tush push. He had 3 rushing attempts in the last game. I think that it happens again here. Give me Hayward, plus 3,500.
A lot coming up this week on the Sony Open, by the way. Speaking of long shots, one of the first bets I considered, I didn't make the click. Hank Lebioda at 700-1. We love long shots here on the early edge. Let's talk about Larry's first touchdown score.
Well, I like Mike's better than mine now, but I'm going to take Jaylen Warren 10-1. He's been awesome the last 3 weeks, running very efficiently, catching the ball out of the backfield. Let's get him in the end zone first at 10-1.
All right. Those are your first touchdown scores. Mike, you shouldn't have brought up golf. Now I want to spend the rest of the show talking golf, but no worries, folks. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to talk who's going to cover the spread, but we're going to talk totals. And then after that, we're going to talk about looking ahead to the divisional round. And we've got some NBA coming up on this show too. So stay tuned. A lot more to come on the early edge. We're back on the early edge, and it's time to talk about who's going to cover the spread and maybe some totals and game props, game totals. Larry, I'll start with you. We largely have consensus on this game, but we do have one detractor. You are not one of them. Who are you taking against the spread?
Well, I'm a little late to the party with the Steelers plus the 3. You could have had 3.5 earlier, but I still like it as long as we're getting a full field goal at home with the team that has Watt, that has Highsmith, that has Harmon on the defensive line. And Dylan Cook at left tackle has really improved this offensive line, kind of not very noticed in the last 3 weeks that he has taken over, and the Steelers offensive line is creating better holes. And I just think Houston is a conservative defensive type team that always plays a close game. D'Amico Ryans is not going in there looking to throw and blow you out. It's going to be close to the vest on both sides. I love taking a full field goal.
All right, we're taking the field goal with Larry, and Mike, you're doing the same.
Yeah, I like the field goal here. I just think it's a tight, competitive game that ultimately is decided by kicking field goals, to be honest with you. And I like Chris Boswell a lot more than I like the other side of this one, particularly because of the baseline and kicking and these kind of conditions. I think that really shouldn't be overstated or understated, in this particular matchup. I just like the way that Aaron Rodgers can manage a game. I have questions about CJ Stroud and this offense outdoors. We know they're a great defense. However, I think Pittsburgh has a pretty good defense in certain kind of matchups. This to me projects as one of those. So I like a tight, competitive game decided by a field goal one way or the other. Give me the Steelers with the points.
So Danny Brasco, I'm kind of excited that not all 4 of us are on the Steelers plus 3, because that means it's just auto Texans, alt spread, -10, whatever the case may be. I'm also on the Steelers plus 3, which means you must be the detractor. You're on the Texans.
You know we need a dissenting justice, Sia. That's the way the court works. I got to take the Texans here just because I don't trust the Steelers offense that ranked 25th in yards per game this season. Rodgers, when he faced the top 10 defense, now he faces the number 2 DVOA defense in the NFL, perhaps the best. He had 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, 78 passer rating. This offense, I don't think can get going against a Texans defense that's very good against short area passes. That's what the Steelers have to do. And a lot will be made of, like Larry mentioned before, some of the cracks in this Texans defense. They gave up a lot of points to the Colts with Riley Leonard under center, but Kamari Lassiter wasn't playing in that game. He's been dealing with some injuries. He's the number 25 graded cornerback in the NFL. He's back. He looks to be healthy, of course, alongside number 10 ranked Derek Stingley. If they're locking down DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin downfield, what's going to be left for the Steelers offense? Really, with a total of 38.5, you're asking me to pick which defense wins. I'm taking the Texans all day, and I think it will be a close game until perhaps it gets away from them late with some big explosive plays like Zay Flowers and the Ravens were able to hit. Maybe Nico Collins beats that man coverage heavy defense late, and they can pull away and cover this field goal spread.
It's certainly a compelling argument there that it's hard to vehemently disagree with that because these two teams kind of match up pretty well against each other. And I would say the Texans certainly have the more formidable defense. Let's go to a total. Mike, there's not a lot of strong takes on the total, which means it's probably a pretty efficient number. With that said, it's 38.5, like Danny Brasco mentioned. I think at BetMGM, they might have adjusted it to a flat 38. I'll go back and check that as you're giving out your take, but you lean to the under.
Yeah, I lean to the under, Sia, and I think it's playable until you get to 37.5. That's the absolute stopping point. 37 still an extremely, extremely key number, thinking 2017 kind of game. But when I look at this particular matchup, I look at the path for like the home team here in the Steelers and how they want to play and how they're likely to win. And it's likely a lower scoring game. So while I lean under, my preferred way to play it, which I talked about this morning on the Early Edge morning show, is I've actually played it in an SGP. I went under 44.5 with the Steelers at plus 4.5. That number plus 110 on the payout. To me, the idea that I can get home with that ticket in a 24-20 game, a 23-20 game, that is appealing to me. I think a great outcome for the Houston Texans offensively here is getting to that number of 24. And I think that this is just a tight competitive game. So getting the 4.5 and the under 44.5, that correlation in this particular game is not the same as a normal NFL game. So give me that combined here, plus 110.
Yeah, I like that you referenced the Early Edge morning show. That's every Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock on the SportsLine YouTube channel. Just go to SportsLine on YouTube and you'll find it. Make sure you're subscribed to that channel. All right, let's move along because, we didn't have any strong takes on the totals other than what Mike just laid out. Let's go to a team total or first half bet. And Danny, talk to me about Texans first quarter money line.
Yeah, the Steelers have been an extremely slow starting team historically, actually. You look at their first quarter points, 0 first quarter points in the last 6 playoff games and 7 or less Q1 points in 69 consecutive games. That's a pretty alarming trend there. They just don't go fast under Mike Tomlin. So I'm going to take the Texans first quarter money line. I was very compelled to take -0.5 on the spread for them to win the first quarter outright at plus 130. But I'll get the push condition. I'll take the -125, not be too greedy. I think the Texans start faster in this game. The pass rush gets to Rodgers early. CJ Stroud hits a big play, and the Texans are on top to start.
Yeah, I like that you left the push option in there at the -125 money line. Larry, you've got to play in this team total first half department, but it's on the Steelers team total over.
Yeah, over 17.5, even if it takes 6 field goals from Boswell. I think we'll get there. If you look at Houston down the stretch, it wasn't just Riley Leonard who was able to move the ball against this team. The Raiders put up 20-plus points. The Cardinals put up 20-plus points. The Chargers did not, but we saw what the Chargers looked like last night with their offensive line. I think the key to this game is that the Steelers have a good pass-blocking offensive line. They can protect Aaron Rodgers at least long enough to do what he wants to do, which is not to throw against those corners. He wants to throw to Gainwell, to Warren, to Freiermuth, to all of his tight ends and short area targets. So I think the Steelers match up well, at least to get to 20 points.